Welcome to Honest Car Reviews. My name is Eric and this is the BMW 240i. The 240i has received a major update. It has gone from rear-wheel drive only to four-wheel drive through BMW's xDrive four-wheel drive system. It's received a major exterior change, but also of course on the interior. The underpinnings of this car is actually 3 and 4 series. And add the four-wheel drive system and that 3-liter straight 6. This car is actually fairly heavy for such a small car. About 1750 kilograms. And that's more or less the same as a BMW M3. But it does also mean that the new 240i can compete directly with the Mercedes CLA 45S and the new Audi RS3, because all of these are four-wheel drive. From the exterior point of view, the new 240i is dramatically different compared to the old 240i in almost every single angle. You have a completely new front with the gills here. They're closed off for better aerodynamic. When the car gets hotter, you're driving more quickly, it needs more air, these will open up. Pretty smart feature. Extremely cool BMW LED lights. And this bumper is also fairly aggressive. This is some plastic here, no, rubber, to make it more aggressive. And you can see that this is a different color here. And that color can also be seen on these really aggressive side view mirrors. There's an opening here to channel some air to the front wheels. The rims here are Pirelli P0, and let's see how wide they are. 225 in the front, and let's see, 255 in the rear. So staggered combination. And this paint is an extra option, and the general spec of this car I feel is a home run. This different colored side view mirror, the front, the paint on the rims, and this purple paint looks really good. Stands out in this small sedan coupe market. The rear has been the most discussed part of this 240i, and for me, especially at this angle, the rear has some really weird proportions. I think it has a lot to do with the rear lights, because they are mounted really far out. When you compare with other BMWs, they have a very rectangular thin light that goes like this. This is more chunky and moved to the sides. And compared to the previous generation 240, that one was very simple, very elegant. It has more shapes, more creases, and some people might like that, some people might hate that. This little exhaust is actually fake, but you do have a real exhaust in there. And we'll check into the rear luggage space, and it's quite decent actually. You can go quite far out, a bit of a lip, but you can go really far in actually. You can fit not only your washing stuff, but you can even fit a lot of groceries. So in terms of the practicality of hauling stuff, I think this is up there with anything on the market. This is a 3-door, a coupe, and there aren't that many coupes on the market. So you'll actually have to look to, for example, the Porsche Cayman stuff. So this has a very unique position in the market right now, where there aren't that many coupes that can compete with this car. The performance comes from a 3-liter straight 6 with 374 horsepower and 500 Newton meters of torque. The 0 to 100 km/h time is a claimed 4.4 seconds, but that has also been tested and found to be about 3.9 seconds. BMW likes to downplay their numbers, which means that when people have tested this on the dyno, they see about 400 horsepower. And before I start talking too much about how this car feels, I believe them. This is very fast. And having a straight 6 just feels right in this type of car. And we'll actually check on the rear seats, because this car has rear seats. It's actually electrically operated, so it goes forward. And let's try to get back here. Not that difficult. Flip it back. And there my knees are starting to get crushed. But it actually automatically adjusts itself to not crush my knees completely. Alright, my head is tilting forward a lot. I can't sit here for long periods of time. Maybe some children can sit in the rear, because the bench is actually not that high up. So if you're not that tall and can actually fit your head underneath this roof, I think it's not that uncomfortable. And if you don't have that long legs, you do have some foot space. And for a coupe of this size, I think that's actually pretty decent. You do have an armrest here, pretty okay visibility, not the best, but for a coupe, it is actually more than decent. So this car, as a base price, costs from 57,000 euros. With the extra option paint, these extra option rims if I'm not mistaken, and possibly even the seats and some infotainment systems and safety systems, this is about 63,000 euros. Now we'll get into the driver's seat to check the interior. The first impression is really good. It feels simple yet aggressive enough for this type of car. The steering wheel has some complaints that it's a bit too thick, but I personally don't have any complaints about it. The buttons on the steering wheel are really nice. The touch on them is really nice, and they're buttons, not haptic. They work. I have paddles behind the steering wheel, so we can go into manual, which I'll show later. And the look of the steering wheel is just nice in general. You do have buttons for controlling the climate control. And if I start the car, here that's straight 6. You have a little screen here to show the temperature and the fan speed. Really simple, but it just works. The same with the infotainment system and the infotainment screen. Not too big, pretty integrated in everything. It's very different compared to Mercedes MBX system. And truth be told, there are some times where you find yourself having to press a lot of sub-menus to get where you want. And I would like it to be a bit more like a phone with some more apps. But it does mean that the look of this iDrive system is very unique and it feels very BMW. They've done a really good job at making it feel unique, their own. It's fairly easy to get used to. Doesn't look too flashy, but not too simple at the same time. Just a happy medium. The sound system, really good. It's the upgraded Harman Kardon surround system. There's plenty of bass, but it's not too sharp and not too soft. Just a happy medium. The interior feels huggy, angular, aggressive, and a bit timeless. If you look back at earlier BMWs, you can see a lot of similarities. Some people might think that's bad because they're not reinventing stuff, they're not being fresh enough. Some people might see it as a good thing because everything just works. There are buttons to control the air condition, there are buttons on the steering wheel for the cruise control, to change track, to change volume. All of that just works. I do have wireless charging, cup holders underneath here. They're not that much space. You do have one USB-C here and one old lightning port here. Nice that they have a lightning port. Some cars only have USB-C, so it's difficult to charge your phone, but that's about it. I like that they have blue stitching all around and everything feels really solid. Better than, for example, a Mercedes CLA 45. But in terms of comparing these two, this feels more solid, a bit more cramped, maybe a bit more sporty, but the Mercedes definitely has their own perks. It looks very unique, very cool, very futuristic. They're always changing the game with their interiors, and the digital gauge cluster on the Mercedes is clearer. Down here I'll talk about how these driving modes feel later. You have Sport and Sport Plus, Sport Extra Dynamic setting. You have Individual, which you can configure to make the damping a bit softer, maybe the steering be a bit sportier, and the engine be really sporty, but the transmission, you don't want it to keep you up in the rev range as much, so maybe you want it to be a bit softer. You have Eco Pro, and I'll talk quickly about the consumption. If you're really careful, you can get this car to about 0.7 liters per 10 kilometer, which I feel is really good. And adaptive, so it predicts how the car should be set up for how you're driving. Pretty interesting. I haven't used it that much. I'm either in Comfort, Eco Pro and Sport for the most amount of my time, depending on how I'm driving, of course. You have a button to turn off the traction control directly, and that makes it possible to also go into launch control. To turn on launch control, you put your car into Sport Plus, turn the traction control off, put the car into the gearbox into Sport, hold the brake, hold the throttle, you'll have launch control, and then just release the brake. Launch control active. Very, very effective at putting the power down, even on this bit damp road. The daily usability of the BMW M240i. The gearbox, which is not a double clutch gearbox, I think it's a ZF 8-speed. Really smooth. Couple that with the engine, which is also extremely smooth, extremely linear in the power band. You do have some torque down low, but then the straight 6 comes to its own once you get up in the rev range. So really, really nice combination there. You do feel that it's a bigger car per se because of the weight and the four-wheel drive system. It just feels like it's not a light car. It doesn't feel agile on its feet. It doesn't feel like that utter sporty car. It feels more like a grown-up sports car. The steering is extremely light, and you do hear it, especially when you are parking. You have to go lock to lock a lot. You do hear the servo, which is a bit annoying. In terms of just driving on the highway, using it daily, I think there's no problem there. But it does have that sportier side, and especially on the highway, I feel it's a bit, not edgy, but the on-center steering is better on other cars. No real complaints though. There isn't bad, but we're nitpicking here, so in that aspect, highway cruising, eating up miles, I think there are better cars. You sit fairly low down. The seats are comfortable. They are bolstered, but you do have some manually adjustable lower thigh support, so you can have a really, really good seating position. These seats are sporty enough, but also comfortable enough. A really, really good mixture in between. I have all the necessary info on my head-up display, and the digital gauge cluster here is not that customizable actually. It's only when you change from, for example, Comfort to Sport, and maybe in Eco, you can see that there are some changes on the sides here, but in terms of what's in the middle, you have your map. That's about it. All right, let's take this on some twisty roads. So we'll start in Comfort. And it's nice detail. It's the same color on the infotainment system as the car of itself. It is quick, and it has a really nice tone. Feels very up on its feet, but also fairly planted. The rear axle is really strong. I feel that's the big part of this car. It feels really sticky, it feels planted. The front is eager to turn in, but isn't as aggressive as the rear. So let's see here. It's a bit wet, so we'll take it a bit careful. The brakes are very easy to modulate. A bit on the softer side, the braking pedal, but let's put it into Sport Plus. More sound, you do get some pops. Take it careful here. It is super quick. A lot of torque, but the power is very linear. Yeah, it is. I don't feel that I want to be in manual. I feel it's responsive and does what I want it to do, this gearbox, even in automatic. I don't have to be in manual to control the gearbox. It feels like it does what I want it to do. But let's test launch controls. We're in Sport Plus. We'll put it in the gearbox in Sport as well. Turn off the traction control. Hold the brake. And hold the throttle. Launch control active. The shifts are aggressive. I think I'll put on traction control again. Yeah, it's super, super, super quick. It moves about. Feels alive. The rear axle feels really, really stable, but it can carry some real speed. A lot of grip, even though it's only 225 in the front and 255 in the rear. A lot of grip. The rear bias of the four-wheel system makes it eager to rotate, more playful, more alive, but you do have to be more careful. The rear axle, or the rear end, is the party piece, so to say. It's extremely planted, but once you get the power down, you do have to be mindful of that power. Super rapid. Let's feel the front end here. Maybe not the most alive front end, responsive front end, but enough for this car. Makes it feel more mature, more easy to drive. And I think it's the perfect mixture of aggressive, fun, playful for a M240, since it's not a full-fat M car. Adding a four-wheel system, more power, a more mature chassis has taken this to a whole different level. Yeah, and that is a more mature level. It feels extremely competent using this daily, and it feels extremely competent when you drive this fast. It might not have the most focus and bone-crushingly aggressive setup when driving fast, but it's fun to play with. And it has a really, really playful side. And that's what I was expecting from a BMW M car, and that is found in this car. It feels like an M3 Lite, and in terms of speed, it's actually on par with the current generation BMW M2, and that says a lot. Which means that I can't wait to see what BMW will make with the M2. That's my final conclusion for the BMW 240i. See you next time.